being upheld by God. God knew that in the raw, that he had himself someone who could further the kingdom of God. And God found a way by causing his blindness on the road to Damascus and by bringing Saul to the realization that the one God was the Trinity. That the one God had more than one name. God, in his most powerful and glorious position in Saul's life, decided that he was going to cause a miracle to happen to his son, Saul. And we all know the story, so I won't go into that. And Saul eventually had his name changed. In the Bible, I was so excited to get this portion to teach because of Paul. Paul has always been my favorites, always. It's like a 4-year-old saying, oh, all my life I've loved something or other. 4 years old. Well, I'm in the Lord 7 years, so it's about the same thing. But Paul has been my favorite only because of what he went through and what his upbringing was and his communication with God and what God had done for him because of knowing that his Saul would one day become our Paul. I was excited because I couldn't wait to go into the Bible and answer a question that I've had, and I guess I never had the time or whatever, but to find out, well, what caused the change of name? What caused Saul to become Paul? So I researched and researched and researched and researched and asked and went on the computer and I went absolutely out of my head. But it was really very simple. All I did was go to the King James Version of the Bible. And in the King James Version of the Bible, where it speaks of Paul, and it wasn't in the beginning, it wasn't when he first received back his eyesight and became a believer in the Lord. It was further down the line, about 3 chapters. There's a parenthetical phrase, and it said, his other name was Paul. And as of that little sentence, he was Paul. He was no longer Saul. And I said, oh my goodness, God, that wasn't fair. I spent all this time trying to find out why the change was made, and here is just a little parenthetical phrase. But, my friends, that parenthetical phrase is one of the most important phrases in the Bible when it comes to the believing of a man who did not believe, but who came to believe in the Lord. Amen. So Paul went out and did God's bidding. Paul knew the will of the Lord, and he went out and he testified and he taught and he preached and he brought people to God. But there were some zealots, some Pharisees, some Sadducees, who did not believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. So he had his problems. And those problems caused him to be put in jail. And what Paul decided was he was going to go to the powers to be, whoever that may be. In the first case it was Festus. To go to Festus and to show him very simply, I'm not hurting anyone. All I'm doing is bringing information. bringing knowledge to the people. They make the decision. I'm not converting anyone. All I'm doing is teaching. And Festus eventually agreed and went to King Agrippa. King Agrippa also called Paul to him, and Paul did the same thing. He just said simply, what am I doing wrong? All I'm doing is teaching people and letting them make the decision. Well, Agrippa was also convinced. In fact, Agrippa was so convinced that he decided almost to become a believer. Almost. But Paul wasn't finished, because God upheld him to the nth degree. God gave him the energy, the knowledge, the wisdom, the belief, and the truth that needed to be told. And Paul would not stop until he had convinced those people in his life that need convincing that he was doing nothing wrong. He was doing the bit of the Lord, but he was also helping people by giving them information, by giving them knowledge, by teaching them. He was doing the same thing that the man that he prays through to the Father was brought to earth for. Jesus Christ was sent down by the Father to give information, to give knowledge, to give a way to the kingdom of God. And that's what Paul was doing. And God upheld everything that had gone on with Paul. God gave him the path, gave him the route, brought him around the mountain. Paul did not have to do what he did. As soon as Festus said that this man did nothing wrong, Paul was released. But Paul would not stop there, because he knew what his commission was from God. So after Agrippa, he convinced Agrippa to send him to Rome, because he was going to put the same information and the same question to Caesar Augustus. Paul went, and instead of being placed in jail in Rome, where the other prisoners were placed, he was put on house arrest.